Well, I was just going to walk around for a little bit. She was still going to, sleep in for probably another half hour. So I took a walk. I didn't even have to go, not even probably an eighth of a mile, just off the campsite, a short trail. And I was standing right there at the edge of the Grand Canyon, and I couldn't move.
All right. Thank you for joining us at the Attain Wealth Podcast. This is the podcast where we dive into individual stories, kind of hear what made them who they are, and kind of got them to what they're doing now and lessons they've learned along the way. So really looking forward to today's episode. We have Jonathan Winters here to talk a little bit about his story. So, thank you for coming, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Jonathan. And biggest thing we're going to talk about today, I think, for your story at least, is kind of the decisions that you make as you transition throughout your life. And I think a big thing, we talked a little bit before you came in, or when you were in actually, about your story. And I think where you kind of have a lot of stuff that people can get a lot out of is kind of getting to a spot in your life where you're doing what you're doing and maybe realizing that, hey, maybe this isn't where I want to be. So maybe to start, tell us a little bit about where you're at now, and then we'll kind of dive in to what you're currently doing.
Sure.
And kind of what you got you there. So, yes.
So my current position is I'm a health and safety manager at Western New York Energy, an ethanol producing facility in Medina, New York. That position is going to be transitioning into learning and development director because of my journey over the last few years. But for me, it kind of goes back probably about 10, 12 years ago, to where I was had a job, a position. I loved what I did, but I didn't see myself wanting to do that for 20 more years.
Right.
So it was kind of an awakening that I had for myself, as I wanted to do more. One of the quotes that I've loved over this journey by Mark Twain is the two most important days in your life: the day that you were born, and then the day that you figure out why. And since 2014 has been me figuring out my why and diving deeper into that. So the biggest thing for learning lesson for me has been that growth mindset.
Yeah, and I think that's huge, because I think there's a lot of people out there that think they need to know their why when they're 18, 19, they go to college and you decide what you want to do. And it's kind of crazy to think the amount of people I know that went to college for something or had an idea where they wanted to go throughout their life. And as they got older, they just realized, hey, this isn't what I thought it was. You kind of get, again, we talk about responsibilities on the podcast. We talk about commitments. I think the biggest thing that we talk about sometimes is sometimes you have to do what you got to do to survive, to feed your family, to get you in a position where you want to be. But that doesn't mean you can't make changes. And I think that's really, amazing that you did that and kind of putting yourself in a spot where you can also be successful, but do stuff that you love. I think that's a tough one. So kind of starting from the beginning, I like to kind of start about your childhood. Did you grow up in Buffalo? Tell me a little bit about where you grew up and how your childhood was.
So I grew up in Medina.
Okay.
Currently live in Lockport, grew up in Medina. And so that was one of the things that I really enjoyed, having the opportunity to take a position back in Medina almost 8 years ago.
And for the people that don't know, we're in Buffalo. Medina's outside of Buffalo. I would call it almost like not country, but close. I think maybe, is that a good analogy?
Very good analogy.
Okay, you continue. Yeah, just so people know.
The town of Medina, I guess city of Medina, is a great place, great community. And I lived probably about 5 minutes outside, of town, rural area,
Okay.
A lot of farmland, a lot of nature, and just connecting out into that country environment.
I think they have a railroad out there too, I think,
They
right?
do.
That's a big thing they're known for. So.
And the canal going right through Medina.
Cool.
So, a great thing growing up. So I grew up in Medina. Really great. I had a really great upbringing.
Right.
I had a great supportive family, some good friends, challenges like anyone.
Right.
I wasn't comfortable going through school. I did well in school. I just didn't love school.
Right.
My extended family had a business growing up that my grandfather had started. It was a feed supply or pet supply business. So, ever since I can remember, I would go to work with my dad on a Saturday morning, and whatever it is he was doing, I was following right along. So it was a really good opportunity for me in growing up, learning a lot of responsibility and values early on.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. You hear a lot is, not everyone's like this, but for a lot of people, the idea of working hard and having that drive sometimes comes from being a kid. I know myself as a kid, I was never given anything. It was like, hey, you want something, you go work for it. And I feel like that's just kind of stuck with me throughout my life. I don't know if it's similar for you, where it's like, hey, you want something, you go get it, kind of
Right.
thing.
Very
So
similar. And that's why I think of hard work. I do interviewing, where I'm at now in my job, and you get people that will come in, and hard work is I usually dig a little bit deeper into that because it's so cliche. Oh, I'm a hard worker. I'll come in and I'll work all the hours you want for me to do, whatever days you want me to come in and work. But hard work, when I think of it, it's intentionality, it's attention to detail, and it's having a purpose,
right.
defining that success ahead of time.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. And a lot of times I'll when I talk to someone, just being a business owner, there's this thing you can't shut off in your brain. And you might know, you might be the similar way, just with a lot of your passion for what you do. It could be 8 o'clock at night and I'll get an idea and I have to write it down. I'll put it in my phone. It's just sometimes things don't shut off, and when your
Right.
brain's going, it's going. There's no time frame on it. So mowing the lawn, I'll be like, oh, this is a great idea, just because I'm thinking, But kind of on the interviewing topic, what's your favorite interview question that you like to ask people? And take the tips. If you're listening to this and you're going to be interviewing someone, or you're going to get interviewed or interviewing someone, remember this, because you might be asked this one. So what's your favorite interview question?
Probably my favorite question when I go into an interview, you have your standard questions, what's their experience, for me, it's their core values, who they are, digging into, what are their true strengths, and then getting having them talk about them in an example, an experience, sharing that. So in getting to know them, it's what are their core values, what's important to them.
Okay. That's cool. I like that. And then kind of on that topic of still childhood, what was your ideal job when you were a kid? What, fast forward, 15, 16-year-old John, what would you want to do when you were older?
I always had a fascination with helicopters.
Okay.
And so I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. I can remember when we would take road trips growing up, I would be sitting in the back seat, almost imagining, just envisioning that I'm flying a helicopter. And my dad would always look in the rearview mirror and just kind of chuckle, at me. So, where are you flying to today? Or, those kinds of things. They'd play along with it and that. But I loved helicopters and just wanted to fly helicopters.
That's awesome. Yeah, so one of my guests that are coming up, I think beginning of June, he actually was in the Air Force and he flew helicopters. So he has some pretty cool stories about all that stuff. And it's just funny, hearing that you like helicopters, because I don't think I flew on a plane till I was like 20 or 21, just because, I grew up in a big family, lived in the country, and when we traveled, we drove. And the first time I flew with my wife, and I was, scared. I mean, even now I have to fly more often because of my job. And if I don't have to, I'm not going to, because I still don't enjoy it, especially with the way stuff is lately. I feel like every time I ride a plane, the landing, I feel like I'm going to flip over or going to crash. I mean, I never crash, but
Right.
I'm just not used to it,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's pretty cool. So do you ever get to go in have you gone in a helicopter?
I have not, and
Okay.
that's still one of those things on my bucket list.
Gonna make
that I definitely plan on doing at some
They have a
point.
lot of stuff in Buffalo, like the helicopter tour over Niagara Falls would be pretty cool.
Yeah, a lot of
So-
great experiences that we can do
definitely
locally.
would. Yeah, I'm excited to hear when you finally do it. So as I think we talked a little bit about this at the introduction, defining moments. What moment growing up, or even now, I think you talked a little bit more about it now, struggle, breakthrough, failure that really shaped kind of your perspective and made you have a change of mindset moving forward? Tell me a little bit about something like that happened. I know you kind of mentioned it earlier, but more about that, I should say.
I had 3 of them. So 1997-ish, I was 25. The family business that I had grown up in, and at that point is all I ever really thought I would ever be doing, is ran into some struggles. And so knowing that the business was going to be closing, I stepped out and, took another job. I worked for a construction company as a dump truck driver, amongst many other things that I was doing. But that was my first big challenge, because I had to step outside of my comfort zone, what I had known my whole life, and kind of step out on my own merits, where it ties back to those values and those experiences that I had learned as a kid, that allowed me to do that and to do well at what I did in doing that. And then about 6-7 years later, I had kind of gotten to the highest point where I could there. Ended up working for a bigger company, so for FedEx Freight
Okay.
in Buffalo. was there 15 years as a city driver, a road driver, and then as a supervisor. But that ties into that second pivotal moment for me. I was about 42, 2014-ish, to where I loved what I did. I knew it made an impact, but I couldn't see myself doing that for 20 more years. I felt I had so much more to give and learn and do that I stepped out again and, stepping into the current role I'm in now as a health and safety manager.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's kind of crazy to think, because I think so. On my next podcast, I'll have Dell on, and very similar story where he made a career change to start 26 Shirts. So, kind of as you went through that, how did you feel when you decided to make that transition? Were you excited? Were you nervous? Did it, what did that feel like to you?
I think every bit of that, excited, nervous, just unsure of what's going to happen.
Right.
How is it all going to work out? But the one thing I believed, I believe that I have more to give and that the opportunities were going to come if I, put myself out there. As my socks show, I love the show Ted Lasso, but it's about believing.
Right.
Believing in yourself, believing in growth mindset, having more to give. And so, I took that chance and I would do it again. I will do it, again at some point, being in a full-time role now, but I envision myself going into more leadership development and personal development in my own business at some point.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting, because I feel like a lot of people maybe debate making that switch or feel like they're stuck in a job they don't really love.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, especially in this world, it's money can be tight, things can be hard, and you try to find whatever job you can find. And then sometimes you get in this career and you're growing in the career. Doesn't mean you can't be successful, but it's kind of the idea that you go to the job and you go through the motions a lot of times and you feel good about it, but you don't feel fulfilled. And I think that's a big piece of this, is doing something that kind of fills your bucket, so to speak. And I think when someone decides to make that transition, it's not easy, because you could, how it is. You go to a new career, you go to do something different. Just because you're going there doesn't mean you're going to make the same amount of money you're making now. Sometimes you may have to take a step down before you move forward. And I think, you doing that, kudos to you. And a lot of people don't have the courage and do what that takes to make the transition. And I feel like I'm a big, what's the best way to put it? Stuff happens for a reason kind of person. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of situations, even in my life, that stuff just kind of played out the way it was supposed to play out. I mean, I couldn't have predicted where I'd be at today, because it's just a series of moments that all kind of worked out. And now there's a piece of that. I don't think you wait for those moments. I think the world around you evolves and things happen, and it's all about how you react to that. Take advantage of opportunities and work hard and, kind of getting you to where you want to be. In addition, kind of one step further, I'm a big, karma guy. So I give a little example here. So you ever have pastaroni growing up?
I have not.
It's a little box of noodles. It's like angel hair pasta, and you pour it. So I got my wisdom tooth removed, and I couldn't eat anything. So I was eating these boxes of pastaroni. So my wife has celiac. She can't have pastaroni. And all I thought in my head is, there's these pastaroni Parmesan noodles. Like, you would love these and you can't have them. So yesterday I was sitting at home. I was like, oh, I want to make these. So I went to Wegmans. I bought all the stuff for the pastaroni, and I put the chicken, because I made like chicken strips with it, underneath the bottom. It's like the 2-tier smaller cart. Put it on the bottom. I checked out. I got to my car. I opened the trunk. I put everything in and realized I didn't pay for the chicken. I turned around, went back inside, and paid for the chicken. Because in my head, I'm like, if I don't pay for this, I don't want to be the kind of person this is bad karma. I want to pay for it. I shouldn't do that, and whether or not it's going to help me or not, I mean, maybe. So, but little stuff like that. I'm the person that's going to try to do the right thing in the assumption that if I do the right things, good things will happen around me, whether it's not for me, maybe for someone else, whatever that looks like. So
I love that. And that's a big, I love affirmations and positive quotes. And that's one of them, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Right. And it's so easy. It's not a big deal. Right. And I look ridiculous, really pushing a cart with a thing of chicken at the bottom it just looks funny. Walk in, I turn right back on the line. It was pretty funny. So kind of on that note of drive and getting to where you're at, Do you always have kind of a clear direction that this is the route you wanted to go? Was this something you kind of discovered as you were working at FedEx? At some point, you're like, hey, I don't like this. I want to do this. Or do you always kind of feel like as you kind of went through your career, I want to be a leader. I want to develop leaders. What did that look like for you, and how did you kind of get to be that where you want to make the change?
I didn't always know, what I wanted. For the longest time, I was just kind of stuck in the everyday, grind of life. My job was the most important thing, to me. It always, took priority, even over some family things sometimes. And, that was one of the shifts that I had made, is that, my life was more than the job that I had. It
Right.
was more than the title and the status that I had. So slowly it started to shift for me. Through that awakening period for me was life became about the experiences and the relationships. So I had the service center manager in Buffalo. His name was Lamus Hall, that I grew up with through my time there at FedEx Freight. And so he saw in me, he saw the leadership potential in me, and even the potential for something bigger and greater before I even ever saw it in
Right.
myself. And so, he did a lot of things for me, challenged me, and a lot of things that I failed at, but learned along the way. I went through the leadership development program there, and one of the things that I'll always remember is he's take care of your people and everything will take care of itself.
Yeah, I like that.
And so he had two leadership rules that I kind of learned through him, is that number one, being leadership is leading by example. And then the one I learned over time after that is number two is don't be the bad example.
Yeah. Yeah, I like both of those. I think you represent a lot of what you want other people to be, especially as a leader. And doing, again, we talk about being an example. You want to be the example you want them to be. If they're going to tell them to do something, why would you not be doing it too, kind of thing?
Right.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So, fun little side note, what's the worst job you ever had? I mean,
I had a transition job at one point, before I got to the role I'm in now, that it was about a 5, 6 month period when I had left um, FedEx Freight. I took a transportation logistics job. So sitting at a computer inside of an office, no windows that I could see. And I just did not like that. Not that the work was valuable. The people I was around were good people, great people. I just didn't enjoy it. It wasn't what was, right for me. It didn't fit my core values and strengths of what I wanted to be doing. So
got it. Well, you're probably feeling a little bit of that right now because you're in an office with no windows at the moment here. So we have one window, but it leads into a hallway. So it's technically a lot. That's not to outside. That's just to another part of the office.
Sunlight, right?
Yeah. Oh, my thing died here. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, all the different stuff that you've kind of done throughout your life. And kind of on that note, where did you kind of go to align what you're doing with some of your values? I mean, right now I feel like you're in a spot. What does current John's job look like? What are you doing currently? Talked about a leadership program and maybe transition into that in a bigger role. What does it look like to you? What do you want to do in the future? Because obviously I think pretty much everything, the point of a lot of this conversation is you never stop growing and you never stop evolving. Where do you see your life evolving in the future? You mentioned going full time. What do you want to do full time?
For me, and it kind of goes back a little bit to that growth mindset of my life was compartmentalized. I had my I had my job, I had, my family, things I loved doing at home, and for a lot of my life, they were separate. Yes, they overlapped, and they're all part of my life, but they were kind of separate things. And where I've really evolved over the last 5 to 10 years is learning my core values, taking some time to really figure out what my core values are. What are my character strengths? What is my purpose in life? And now I try to be intentional in everything that I do as compared to, well, I'm going to be this here and I'm going to be this over here. And you'll get a chuckle out of this, and I guarantee the people listening are going to chuckle. For me, it all started in a yoga class.
Oh, funny. Yeah.
So back 2010, my wife and I had just moved to Lockport, and I had dealt with some back injuries in my early 30s. And so I had always looked for things to do, for myself to, for longevity, just to take care of myself and be healthy. So yoga had always been something that was very intriguing for me. I had VHS tapes and DVDs that I had done, in our spare bedroom at home, but going to a yoga class, I found one in Lockport and I went to it and I started going every week. And for me, it was a physical practice to take care of my body. But what happened just naturally, what naturally evolved was the mind-body connection
Oh, nice.
of
Yep.
that. And so that really started my journey of, wow, there's so much more to life. Questioning,
Yeah.
little questions, and just that time to be able to spend in a quiet space. Usually it was power type it was power
Yeah.
style yoga, so sweating or hot yoga, sweating, but it just allowed you that time to just connect back to breath, body, and intention.
Yeah. I think, there's different layers of health, and I think that's a big piece of it is I've never done yoga, so I can't talk for yoga, but what it sounds like to me is it's kind of the idea of it's not only about it's not only about like physical health, there's a mental health aspect to yoga too that I feel like people don't really talk about as much. I'm a big proponent of health, trying to be healthier all the time. And, especially when you own your own business, I get busy. I don't eat. It's 2 o'clock. I'm like, I have to eat something. I mean, I don't have food here. So I'm trying to do better about, always improving, better about eating out. We lost our 12-year-old dog about a year ago and we got a puppy. And the puppy was waking me up at 5 a.m. every day. And I'm a morning person anyways. So once he got old enough, he wasn't waking me up in the morning anymore. I took advantage of that and I said, hey, you know what? I'm still going to wake up at 5:15 or whatever. And I started going to the gym for about 6 months now. 3 days a week, I'm up at 5:15. I'm at the gym at 6 a.m. Hard to stay awake at night sometimes, but I'm getting used to it. It's become a habit. And we talked on the way in about the book Atomic Habits. I read that about a year ago, and that was something I really tried to push into my life. Creating the habits of doing yoga, being healthier, making small, tiny, incremental changes that you don't notice as much. A big piece for me is I used to wake up in the morning and pull up my phone and sit on my phone for the first 15, 20 minutes of the morning. Now I wake up, I'll look at my phone, but I'll make sure that I don't spend my entire morning on my phone. Way better things I could be doing. Even if I'm sitting and drinking my cup of coffee and on my phone is better than in my bed on my phone.
Right.
So little stuff like that. I love the billboard thing. So I had Josiah on last 2 weeks ago now, and his big thing is that he's been on a billboard a ton of times. So how we manage it, I don't know. I'm going to put myself on a billboard and just 4 times so I can beat Josiah. But kind of on that topic, if you had to put something on a billboard that you would want to let everyone know about their life or change or things they could do, what would you want to put on that billboard?
Another one of the quotes that has really meant a lot to me over the last 15, 20 years, probably even a little bit longer as I reflect on it. Life is about the journey, not the destination. I was always looking forward to, I lived to, I got through the days, my work days and things, but I was always looking forward to the weekend, looking forward to that next vacation, that next event, whatever that is. And where I've really focused on my intention now is to live for today, because it's all we truly have. Now, as talking about my yoga journey, my wife and I are both yoga teachers now. We went through yoga teacher training together. We did health coaching school together. I just continued to grow and learn, what is the next thing. And I don't do it to, my first reason for doing any of that is for my own personal growth,
Right.
my own personal experience. And then from there to be able to share part of that journey, with the people around me.
I like that. I like that quote a lot because I really do feel like a lot of people get stuck in that where you go to work every day and it's hard, especially if depending on what your job is to go in and put all that time and then have to come home. And I'm a younger, on the younger side of the spectrum, so to speak. And I have a 7 and a 4-year-old. You work all day, you come home and you have kids at home. It's another job in some ways, stuff you should enjoy. But I feel like the problem is you think of it as another job. It's time that you're never going to get back. I try to, in my calendar, when my son has soccer practice, I'll go to almost every soccer practice. I don't miss soccer games. I'm very involved and I do that intentionally. We talk about doing stuff, intentionally. For example, my daughter's graduating. My son has stuff. Everything's in my calendar. I will not miss a kid's event, a kid's thing that's going on because I can only do that once. And I think that kind of fits in a lot of what you're saying is understand that once we talk about time, we talk about wealth, we talk about stuff like that, I would say out of everything, if I have someone come in and they talk to me, your biggest asset is your time.
Yeah.
And how you spend that's very important. If you spend 5 days of your week trying to get rid of the time to make 2 days of the time be worth it, and maybe that should be some reevaluating in some ways.
Right. And
So,
you think
I like
about
that.
it, the mind, it's a shift in mindset. Is it that you have to or that you get to
Right.
do those things?
Yep. I 100% agree. Kind of on so that's the main question portion. So one of my goals here is I got to order some cards because I want to have these flashcards that I throw around the room. I'm not going to throw my remarkable tablet. It's not going to happen. So, but the goal is eventually to have some flashcards we can toss around the room and maybe hit some cameras or stuff as we go. But this is kind of, so that was more of the talking point about your life. This is more of the question portion. I got some fun questions for you. May switch them up a little bit based on the last ones, but my first question is, what does wealth mean to you? Talk a little bit about what that really means.
Wealth for me is abundance, happiness in life. And it's whatever that is, whether that's financial, whether that is spiritual, family, finding that. I always thought of, work-life balance and finding balance in life, especially as being a yoga teacher. Balance is a huge piece
Right.
to yoga. But I heard a podcast recently talking about it's not about work-life balance, it's about finding harmony in life. Finding that right mix that everything's not always going to be great. We're still having challenges, but it's finding that balance, that harmony between work and life and the things that we're passionate about and what our purpose is. And so that's so important to me. And I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. I'm doing everything today to fulfill myself and the people around me today and to make a difference today. And hopefully that compounds and that ripple effect into tomorrow, brings more new experiences, new opportunities tomorrow.
I like that. I like that. So next question would be, obviously we talked a lot about what you're doing in your life and your work. What do you like to do when you're not working? And, what's your personal things you enjoy? I know you have some Ted Lasso socks on, so I'm guessing maybe watching some television or TV, but outside of the stuff you do for your family, stuff you do for work, what does Jon like to do?
I love spending time in nature.
Okay.
Getting outside and connecting to just the energy and the magnificence of nature, whether it's walking around our neighborhood, being in our backyard. Since COVID, my wife and I have started to travel a little more. We've, been to a bunch of national parks. We went to South Dakota.
Oh, cool.
Back in 2020. We've been to Maine. We went to Virginia and West Virginia to the national parks there. 2 summers ago, or fall, September of 23, we went to Utah for 2 weeks.
Oh,
So we
cool.
did the north rim of the Grand Canyon and hit the 5 national parks in Utah over a 2-week period. And there was so many great experiences from that. Part of it for me was I had usually only taken 1 week at a time. So you get to the end of that first week and kind of my mindset is, you should be getting back to work.
Yeah.
That all of that repetition of what you've always done creeps back in. And so it took me another couple days to kind of settle again, just to fully enjoy the amazingness of the world around us.
Awesome. What was your favorite place you've gone to?
I would probably say it was on that trip, but the Grand Canyon. So it's my wife is still probably upset about this moment. So we got in to the north rim of the Grand Canyon, stayed right at the campground. We had rented a tiny camper van. And so we got there late the evening. And so we pretty much went to bed. It was dark already. I got up a little earlier than her and I started making coffee and tea. And I was just going to walk around for a little bit. She was still going to, sleep in for probably another half hour. So I took a walk. I didn't even have to go, not even probably an eighth of a mile, just off the campsite, a short trail. And I was standing right there at the edge of the Grand Canyon. And I couldn't move. I mean, I just could not. Everything hit me that, wow, to walk from a campground looks just like any other campground I've ever been to,
Right.
to open up to that amazing environment was nice. So when I got back to there, I said, "You need to get up and you need to come take a walk with me." She said, "What did you do? Where did you go?"
Oh, funny. Yeah, it's I can do it. I'm a big heights person, and we have Letchworth by us. I would say it's pretty not still Grand Canyon,
Right.
but some bigger drops. And even just going there, it gets my stomach. That's why I don't like flying and helicopters. No, I'm good. But the Grand Canyon, I think, is another level of that's a big drop. That's a big canyon. So that's interesting that you went there and your kind of story about it. Yeah, it would be cool to see, but I'd like to see it maybe from a mile away. Maybe not at the edge. That's a little too much for me.
The one thing that I really learned from that experience and coming home from that, it's kind of a withdrawal. You come back home but we've got some amazing areas right in our own backyards, from the Iroquois National Refuge to Niagara Falls, things that we take for granted.
Right.
And so it's finding the beauty in our everyday life, in our backyards, in the communities that we're living and interacting in.
Yeah. Like you said, thinking about the journey, taking
Absolutely.
advantage of what you have around you. What's one habit you credit for your personal and financial growth throughout your life? What's one thing you do on a regular basis that you kind of encourage other people to do?
That for me would absolutely be gratitude.
Okay.
It's my daily gratitude practice. And it's been probably the one practice, and it's very simple, has been made the biggest difference in my life. When I'm every morning when I wake up, thinking of 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for, not just thinking the thought of what I'm grateful for, but also thinking why I'm grateful for that. Because then that just doesn't just engage the brain, but it engages your heart, and you begin to feel that. So gratitude practice, and some days I journal physically in the journal, and then other days I just think about it. But anytime I get out in nature, just being grateful for everything that's around us.
Yeah, appreciating what's around you, I think, is a very big thing, because it keeps you grounded, keeps you feeling that. I think on the last podcast, I talked a little bit about kind of feeling like a lot of what you've done didn't get you to where you were. You kind of forget. And I think reminding yourself of that could be very important and very empowering in a lot of ways. Last question on the segment here is, what's one piece of advice, if you could meet your 15, 16-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you'd give them, for the future self of them?
Follow your dreams and don't ever stop believing in yourself.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because I feel like a lot of people don't do that. Even now, you forget about your dreams and you get stuck in the life that you have, and nothing's wrong with that. But it's important to fill your own tank sometimes too.
Right.
Keep in mind those things. And I'm a very big believer in being yourself. I'm very genuine. I'm very myself. What you see is what you get. You won't meet me and think, oh, he's not being who he says he is. I can do and like all the things that I like, but also have a professional career. It doesn't have to be exactly identical. I play video games. I enjoy watching Star Wars and Marvel, but I also love finance and my job and meeting people and doing everything. I just like what I like, and there shouldn't be a time where you can't be yourself. And part of the reason why I work so hard every day is because I have dreams of what I want to do, and I don't forget that. And I really like that analogy, because I think that's something that you've kind of put into your life at the moment here, is as you got to a spot, you still had an idea of what your dreams were, and you didn't let that stop you from making sure you got to where you want to be. So
there's a quote in one of John Maxwell's books, The 15 Laws of Growth, and Josiah, that's a book I had done a study with him on, that the typical person only develops 10% of their potential in their lifetime. And when I read that, I've read that book probably 7, 8 times. It just blows my mind that, we have so much to give and so much to develop, so much that we can do in life. Do we settle for where we're at, or do we go after that?
Yeah. So I think the point of this whole thing is, don't ever stop giving up on what you're doing. If you have to make the change if it's right. Don't do it just to do it. be intentional about the change, and don't forget about your dreams. So,
Absolutely.
but I appreciate having you on, John. I hope if you're listening to this, as a reminder, make sure you follow, subscribe, like, let a comment on below what your dreams are, whatever that is. And I appreciate having you on, John, and look forward to maybe talking more in the future as we go on. So appreciate it. Thanks again.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for everyone for listening.